Hello, everyone, and welcome to my personal March 2026 precipitation, temperature, and severe weather forecast. In this video, we'll be going through week by week, predicting which areas are likely to see the highest precipitation, the highest temperatures, and the highest amount of severe weather and tornado activity throughout the month of March. We got no time to spare, so let's get right into this forecast. Welcome to Davis Weather Tracking. As you can see here, this is predictions for the first week of March from February 27th, that's today, through March the 6th, days 1 through 7. And you can see mainly above average temperatures across portions of the western United States here. There's also some below average temperatures across portions of the southeast, and mainly normal to slightly above average across most of the eastern United States. The only area that isn't significantly above average in the western United States is portions of Washington and northern Oregon, as well as maybe portions of northern Idaho. But overall, mostly above average looking like for that first week of March, especially across the western United States, creeping into portions of the eastern United States, specifically into the Dakotas and portions of Texas. But as we head in towards that second week of March, you could see a huge pattern flip. Portions of the eastern United States are now going to be under the gun for significantly above average temperatures. And across portions of the western United States, we're seeing slightly above to even mainly normal conditions across portions of Oregon into the Multnomah Valley area. As you could see here, this is likely due to a big ridge that will be setting up across portions of the southeastern United States. This will lead to a lot of warm air advection from the Gulf of Mexico, leading to higher dew points as well in these areas, which could increase precipitation and severe weather chances, as we will be taking a look at in a bit. But this will also especially be increasing our temperatures across portions of these areas that have seen very cold winters. So this will probably be literally a warm welcome to those areas. As we head in towards the next week of March, you can see that pattern continues, and we even see a little bit of below average temperatures across portions of Oregon. That is likely due to a huge trough that will be setting up here, and in correspondence to that ridge on the southeastern side of the United States, you see still above average temperatures across most of that eastern United States, and well above average too. This is taking a look between March 13th and March 20th. That's days 15 through 21. As we head in towards the next week, things get a little more uncertain, but still the same pattern persists. A large ridge is likely to be continuing across portions of the southeast United States. This will likely set up very high temperatures across portions of these areas. We may be seeing 70s and 80s in these areas, getting a little taste of summer maybe. But across portions of the Northwest, we're still going to be seeing that below average temperature pattern, likely to them being stuck in that trough. And as we head into the final week of March, this is where things come a little more uncertain. We're not very sure about this just yet, but it's likely that we'll likely start to see a bit of a pattern flip. Maybe that ridge isn't as prominent. Maybe a ridge starts to set up in portions of the western United States. We'll see how that goes, but likely most of the eastern United States throughout the month of March is expected to be well above average. That is my official prediction, well above average across portions of the east and slightly below average across portions of the West. Without further ado, let's get into precipitation amounts. As you can see here, this is the first week of March for our precipitation anomalies. Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, northwestern Arkansas, those areas could see above average precipitation. That's where we're expecting potentially some severe weather to occur across early March. So we'll be watching that very carefully, and we will also be taking a look at that in just a second here. So stay tuned for that. And you can see portions of the southeast maybe a little bit above average, mostly below average, especially across portions of the western United States and northeast. Luckily, they just saw that huge winter storm, so hopefully that'll be a nice break for them, and that warm weather will likely melt all that snow like we just talked about. But as we head into portions of the second week, above average precipitation will be setting up across most of the central and northeastern United States. This is where that main storm track is going to be, as we were talking about. Below average across the southeast, likely due to that ridge setting up. But our main storm track between that ridge and that trough, that is where we're expecting the highest amount of precipitation. And that storm track is going to be setting up right along this area. These are areas that unfortunately saw severe weather last year around this time as well, so those areas may have to watch out. We see common storm track there stretching between central Texas all the way up through Michigan. And as we continue into The middle portion of March, that storm track continues, though it's a little less prominent now because we get a little more uncertain as we head into mid-March. But main theme continues. You could see southeastern United States below average for precipitation and above average across that main storm track near the central United States and below average across the western where that trough is. This continues as we head into later portions of March, that main storm track. This time it's a little shunted to the north, possibly. Like I said, getting a little more uncertain as we head into this time frame, but that below average precipitation still persisting across the southeast. And as we head into the last part of March, you could see, like we said, a little bit maybe of a pattern flip starting to occur at this time. We may see that ridge begin to shift to the south, shunted to the west, maybe we'll even see, but that storm track may shift to the south as we head into the latter portions of the month. But let's get into what we expect for severe weather and tornadoes. This is the GFS daily sum of CONUS SCP using the latest 0Z and 12Z UTC cycles. You can see here mainly slightly under 0 for that standardized SCP anomaly. When we see these numbers begin to creep up, that's when we know potential severe weather is on the way. And if we have a look here, you can clearly see as we head after March 5th and March 6th, after that first week of March, a big increase, especially on March 9th here. Details are a little uncertain, but we may see potential severe weather across portions of the central United States on this day. As we said, that ridge will be setting up. Maybe a little bit of a drop off after that, but that's also because details become way more uncertain once we get past that point. This has become a common trend, and as you could see, using the daily sum of SCP, that's supercell composite parameter from the GEFS, that's the GFS ensembles, some members predict potentially over 3,000 accumulated SCP across the CONUS throughout March 9th. So, as we get into that March 5th through the 10th timeframe, we're going to have to watch that area in the short term for potential severe weather across portions of the United States. We'll get into specifics of where, but let's take a look in detail at that first week of March on the CSU MLP, which you can clearly see here. Portions of Oklahoma and Kansas on Tuesday, March 3rd are outlined there. And you can see where our 15% severe weather risk, actually, we do have some CSU probabilities here, some 50% regions over there across portions of Oklahoma into Arkansas, as well as Kansas and Missouri. And as we get into March 5th and March 6th, that risk begins to shift to the north as that ridge builds. Portions of the lower Ohio Valley are starting to be outlined, as well as maybe even some of the southeast. So we'll have to watch those areas closely during the first week of March. If we want to go a little bit further out into the future, we can take a look at something else. This is the ML total severe probability from the NSSL guidance on NOAA.gov's website. This is an experimental thing, but it is pretty good at forecasting kind of where we're generally expected to see highest severe weather. So let's take a look at this as we head through March. You can see that first week there, mainly, once again, as we mentioned before, outlined portions of Oklahoma, Arkansas, as well as Missouri and Kansas, outlined in portions of that highest severe probability, as well as Texas as well. Central Texas may be seeing some of that high probability. And as we head, this is when we get into that second week. Here comes a shift to the north, as you could see, potentially creeping into the southeast, as well as portions of the Ohio Valley. A little bit of a shift to the east we might be expecting as we head towards the later portion of early March. And you can see things become a little more uncertain as we head into March 10th, 11th, and 12th. But March 9th, you can see a high area of severe weather has been outlined across most of this area. This doesn't correlate to any specific risk, but we'll have to watch that area specifically maybe as we head from the March 6th through March 10th timeframe for potentially high amounts of severe weather activity. Next, we're going to take a look at the GEFS ensembles here for potentially looking at where our trough could set up and where our ridge could set up. Let's look here at our 850 millibar mean temperature. You can see a bit of a cold air plume there, stretches across portions of the Great Lakes, creeping down into the Ohio Valley as well as into the northeast. But As we get into early March here, as this is on Tuesday, March 3rd at 1 p.m., we're getting close to daylight savings time, by the way, folks, so be prepared to switch those clocks forward. You can see we're starting to see a bit of a ridge build in across portions of the southern United States, and that becomes even more prominent as we head into March the 6th, March the 7th, March the 8th. We're starting to see that ridge very quickly build in across portions of the southeastern United States. This will likely bring extremely warm temperatures to those areas that usually don't see warm temperatures at this time of year. So this will likely bring highly above average temperatures, as we were talking about, and that cold air plume there sweeping down potentially into portions of the western United States. So that is a pattern that could continue, but then we might see a brief flip as we head in towards mid-March, but this is where details become a little more uncertain. Now let's take a look at where that trough could set up. This is the 500 millibar mean wind. This is geopotential height as well as 500 millibar ice attacks. So as we take a look here through the first week of March, we have a bit of an interesting setup. This is what is likely to bring our severe weather. A tiny little trough here is going to start to creep in. This is where we're expecting to see that severe weather risk potentially on March the 4th. That little trough there is going to be responsible for it. Then that will move off to the east. But you can see here clear amounts of ridging being noted on this model. You see the southeastern United States mainly under the gun for that ridge, and we're starting to see potentially a trough build in across portions of the west. As you can see, that's our main average. This is taking a look at 31 ensemble members. And yeah, that pattern continues. Potentially maybe a positively tilted trough. We'll have to see. Details are way out of the way so far, but that ridging across the southeast is definitely likely to occur. This has been commonly noted on basically every single ensemble member for like the past 5 days. So we will especially have to take a look at that. And as you can see, there's even still a little bit of a sign of that troughing still going on as we head to the end of the run, and maybe still a little bit of remaining ridging, but details are still a little more uncertain. Now, we're going to be taking a look at what I think for our severe weather for portions of the United States throughout the month of March. Let's get right into it. For early March, I'm expecting numerous severe weather across portions of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, and northern Texas. This area, I think, is going to be the highest area we'll see for the first week of March. These will potentially feature some of those early severe weather things like that 50% outlook that we see outlined. So we'll be watching that area pretty closely for severe weather across the first week of March. That's pretty confident. I feel like we're starting to see a lot of signs point to that. As we head into later March, it's going to get a little more uncertain. That second week of March here, from March 9th through March 16th, specifically from March 9th through the 11th, that's where we're going to see potentially a lot of severe weather across portions of Dixie Alley, as well as maybe creeping up there into the lower Ohio Valley as well, maybe even getting up into the Great Lakes, and maybe even getting as far south as Texas and Florida. Those areas I expect to see potentially a bit of severe weather as we head into the second week of March. Most of that ridging, especially here, was noted around this area, and most of that storm track was noted here. So we're likely to see some low pressure systems that lately start off and kind of swing their way up to the north, and that will potentially bring a severe weather risk to any areas south of it, especially if we can get enough moisture return. But as I have been looking at a couple of ensemble models, that may not be a problem, as we could be seeing some 60-degree dew points creeping to most of these areas here. So we'll have to be watching these areas very closely as we head to the mid-March time frame for severe weather. As we get later into March, things become a little more uncertain. Maybe a bit of a shunted south storm track as we head towards the later portions of March. That's what I'm starting to see here on these models. But most of those same areas, once again, portions of Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, creeping in there into Tennessee, Kansas, and maybe even portions of Indiana and Illinois. Those areas are likely to see the highest amount of severe activity throughout kind of the mid to getting into late March timeframe. And finally, as we head into late March, this is where complete uncertainty is, but most of that highest severe activity could be shunted to the south. I have outlined it a little bit further north, just simply because most of our analogs from previous years have had activity potentially get up as far north as Chicago, Detroit, as well as maybe even Toledo and Cleveland as well. So we'll have to watch that very carefully. Thank you for watching my March 2026 forecast. We'll have another monthly forecast for you in April and more forecasts in between, especially for that severe weather event that may be occurring potentially in early March. So stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for any of our other uploads, potentially some of our weather history shorts, as you have seen over the last couple of days. There will be one for that later today. But overall, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.